Welcome to Taking Stock. I'm Amanda Lang. Coming up on the show, a plan for pharmacare in Canada is already meeting with opposition, and consumers drive the Canadian economy. A read of how we're feeling. Plus, why do discount airlines fail in Canada? That's all ahead. First, for the week that was in business, it's time for the briefs. We got a read on the strength of both the U.S. and Canadian economies this week. In Canada, the economy grew a surprising 1% in the last 3 months of the year, while the U.S. continues to expand. Its 3.2% growth at the end of last year was lower than previously reported, but still enviably strong by comparison. Canada's largest banks reported their quarterly profit this week, and while not all hit it out of the park, none of them is exactly suffering. Scotiabank and BMO warned that until interest rates begin to soften, they expect economic growth to stay weak. And most of the banks have raised the amount they set aside in case of bad loans, seen as a key indicator of their confidence about the economy.
That credit problem that we could potentially have, and it's always there because most Canadians have a 5-year mortgage. We're rolling through that problem, and we still haven't hit that problem yet.
Pain continues for renters. CMHC said this week that we have the lowest vacancy rate since the 1980s at 1.5%, and that has sent rents up 8%. Separately, ratehub.ca found that 2/3 of homeowners have found paying their mortgage more challenging since rates started rising in 2022. More than half say they're considering changing their spending habits to find extra cash. The province of Ontario is boosting funding to universities by $1.2 billion, but won't allow any tuition increases for in-province students for at least 3 years. The increase in support follows a Blue Ribbon panel report that found Ontario universities were struggling after the government cut funding and froze tuition in 2019.
This is government's responsibility, stepping up, providing the funding. But what we're also doing is providing the $15 million efficiency fund so that universities and colleges can find efficiencies within their own institutions. So I look forward to working with all of our partners as we move forward.
Warren Buffett's investment firm is on its way to being the first non-tech company to reach $1 trillion in value. Berkshire Hathaway posted results this week that did send its stock higher as investors look to join the legendary Buffett in his winning strategies. And those are your business briefs. Well, we've got first steps towards pharmacare in Canada that will include coverage of diabetes medication and birth control. The government announced the plan this week with promises to expand it to a fully universal, full coverage plan down the road. The devil, as always, will rest in the details, including how to pay for the plan. Kevin Page is CEO of the Institute of Fiscal Studies and Democracy and a former parliamentary budget officer. Kevin, always great to see you.
Good to be with you, Amanda.
So this is, as was sort of telegraphed, the beginning of a framework that we might see in place. So this will not be as expensive as a full plan would be. Are you concerned, though, about the path this takes the government on based on its fiscal situation? Does it have the money for pharmacare?
Well, I think the government has the money for a small program that covers diabetes and contraception-related drugs, which is probably be in the $1 to $2 billion range. Even that, though, I think, and again, as you noted, it's not highlighted in the legislation how this will be financed, but I think commitment from the finance minister when we see a budget that this will not be deficit financed, I think would make a lot of people happy.
And of course, we do expect this plan to be expanded. On balance, we would put this, I guess, Kevin, in the same kind of bucket as universal health care. The concern that we run into with some of these programs is how they're structured and to the extent to which market forces can keep them honest, if you will, can keep them kind of lean and efficient. Would it be your hope that a new program like this might do things that, for instance, our healthcare system doesn't and lean a little bit more towards some of those more market structures?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very complicated transition just because there are so many plans and at the public sector level, at the private sector level. We don't have clarity. We'll get clarity over the next year as to which provinces will participate, how they will participate. Like, how will this impact the actual market forces? It still remains to be seen. There's a commitment in the legislation to create groups, 30 days after royal assent, which hopefully we'd get later in the year, to examine these issues.
And as you note, this is something that will be administered by provinces. Alberta has already said it will opt out, but could take perhaps the cash value of its participation. Would you think that's problematic, that something that is kind of at its nature supposed to be universal out of the gate may not be?
Yeah, I think it's still early to tell whether, where Alberta will be, on this, whether they'll be in or not in, notwithstanding the fact that, people were making these sorts of comments without seeing the legislation. And I think, these will be province by province type negotiations. So I think a lot of this work has to be done, and it really remains to be seen what kind of participation we will get. But I think to start small, which is, I think, Minister Holland and Mr. Davies talked about, and to grow it so we can kind of work through some of the issues. To me, that's more of a prudent course.
For sure. And of course, starting with, covering diabetes drugs for Canadians that don't have coverage. One of the key issues here will be, of course, that the vast majority, as we keep hearing of Canadians, have some form of drug coverage already in our current system. Do you think is it your expectation that we'll do a pretty good job of targeting the people that are currently not covered? Or do we need to do a more blanket approach of creating a universal system that everybody can access?
Yeah, I think what we heard from Minister Holland today is that, they're striving to create something that has more of a universal feel. So this will be disruptive, I think, in the marketplace. And the hope will be that, with bulk purchasing through the work of the Canada Drugs Agency, that we can get some of these prices down. There's definitely gaps in the system, including, in these areas that they've highlighted with respect to diabetes, which is growing. Costs in the $10,000 to $15,000 range, upwards of that range over a course of a year for families, which would really be hard for families to come up with that kind of money. So I think the hope is that we can really drive these prices down, close the coverage gaps, and then really good plans to deal with this disruption that's going to follow.
So good to have you for this, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Amanda.
Kevin Page is CEO of the Institute of Fiscal Studies and Democracy. Still ahead, how we feel affects how we spend, which affects the whole economy. Stay with us.